Thank you, Senator, for joining us. Let's just go right to the House of Cards. We just have to ask everybody this. So tell us what you think of the female characters on there.
My colleagues are much nicer. Much nicer. Most of the women in the series are portrayed as quite cold and quite calculating. But my experience is I adore the female colleagues I have in the Senate. Women are so good at working together, finding common ground, getting things done.
Power hungry?
No, they're just, most women come to public service because they want to make a difference. The classic example is Patty Murray, who's the mom in tennis shoes, who wants to fix things. And that's exactly the way they actually are. When I talk to Barbara Mikulski, she loves using lines like, we understand the macroeconomic issues, but what we really care about are the macaroni and cheese issues, and she believes it. So these are very authentic women who want to get to what are the issues around the kitchen table and actually solve problems. And that's one of the reasons why I fight so hard to elect women candidates, because honestly, if we had 51% of women in Congress, we wouldn't have spent 2 whole congressional sessions debating access to contraception. And that's what this House of Representatives did. So
we're going to get right to that. But on the equal time doctrine, I have to do a little bit on military assault.
Of course.
So you just heard your colleague talk about it, and you two have been had a major difference on one issue.
Right.
Let's just talk about the, I won't call them the verdicts, but the decision by the judges in the 2 high-profile cases where these 2 guys basically got off. What was your first reaction when you heard that?
Well, I was disgusted with the sentences. I mean, the fact that one of them just got a slap on the wrist, no jail time, absolute disregard for justice for the victims. So what I take from both of these cases is that the system is broken. It is fundamentally flawed, fundamentally broken from the beginning. And the reality is victims have no faith that they will see justice in this process. And so I don't have any interest in an innocent soldier going to jail any more than I have a guilty one going free. And so what I'm trying to do is create an objective military justice system that is worthy of the sacrifice of the men and women who serve. The fact that the decision maker may well be biased, is not a trained lawyer, to me is a fundamental flaw. And so I think the biggest problem is that 9 out of 10 of these rape victims aren't reporting because they don't trust the system. And what both these cases prove is you cannot trust the system. Both of them were a disaster from the beginning.
But your colleague said that it was the commander in this case that actually brought the case forward and the military lawyers who did not want to. Is that accurate?
At the end of the day, what I'm looking for is a prosecutor looking at the evidence. I don't think it's worthwhile the commanders push forward in all instances, because if there's not evidence, then you may see an acquittal. And if you have acquittal after acquittal after acquittal, do you think more victims will come forward and actually report the rape? Probably not, because if they don't see that the system works, actually works, and see rapists going to jail, I don't think we're going to increase reporting. So my fundamental goal in creating a transparent, objective system is one that will work, one that actually protects civil liberties. And you don't want to tip the scales of justice for the victim or the defendant. You want the scales of justice to be blind. That is what our democracy is based on, and we do not have that in the military justice system today.
Is it hard for you to understand that, to kind of grasp that another woman wouldn't support your view on this?
Not at all. Women are not a monolith. We agree on many things and we disagree on many things. But what I do know is all of us come to the table with goodwill and good intentions to get something done. And it is normal for women not to agree on all things because we all come from different backgrounds, different perspectives, different life experiences. But what is good is that debate coming to the fore where we can talk about issues and say, well, what is the best solution? What are the risks of this solution? What are the rewards of this solution? And that's what we've done. And we have passed many significant reforms. Many of the reforms we put in the National Defense Authorization Bill are strong reforms. The challenge we have, though, is all of them only accrue to victims who report the crime. All of them are only help make the system better for a victim who will come forward. So in the 9 out of 10 cases where that victim's been jammed by a commander already saying, it's your own fault, I'm not going to do anything, or told by her pastor, you need to pray more, or told by the nurse or the medical attendant she sees that, why are you telling me? this is what's happened to victims who have tried to come forward. And so when that first person you report your case to says, this is going to end badly for you, you may well be kicked out of the military, you may well be prosecuted for adultery or drinking, that case never gets reported. And so the reason why we've worked so hard to create an objective, independent system is we want to create credibility within the system. We don't want commanders to be making ultimate decisions who aren't trained and may have political reasons to go forward or may have reasons to make sure it gets shoved under the rug. That bias has no place in a objective criminal justice system that's worthy of the sacrifice the men and women ought make.
So would it be fair to say that you don't agree that the media has been spending way too much time on this one difference between the two of you? You think it's important enough that
I think it's an important difference. And you know, our allies all did this for civil liberties reasons. They didn't have a problem with reporting of sexual assault. So in 1955, when Israel changed their system, they decided if it's a serious crime, a rape or murder, something where you could go to jail for more than a year, it deserves the objectivity of the decision maker being a trained prosecutor. Our other allies we fight side by side said the same thing. UK, Australia, Canada, Netherlands, all of them said for civil liberties reasons, if it's a serious crime, it deserves a legal system that is not rife with bias. That is why you do it. It's not that reporting went up or down. They didn't have the same problem we have. The reason we looked to those other systems is their militaries didn't fall apart the next day. Our military says you can't possibly do this because it will undermine good order and discipline. In those military systems, they still have good order and discipline. They still fight wars. They still have functioning military. Everything didn't fall apart the day you said the commander can't make this decision. And so my point is, you can look to these systems because they believed in civil liberties, and I believe in civil liberties. And I believe if we have a better system, victims will have more faith in it and will hopefully report.
One final question on this, and I'll move on to electoral politics. Your effort fell short a couple of weeks ago of being able to strip the commanders of their authority. Where do you go now with it?
We're going to keep fighting. The number one thing, if you just sit down with a group of victims, if you sit down with veterans organizations, Iraq and Afghanistan vets, Vietnam vets, they will tell you this change is good and this is the right change because it's the only thing that restores confidence in the system so victims will report. And so I'm going to keep fighting for our victims. The number one thing they are asking for is they don't want this decision to be made within the chain of command because that's the number one impediment. They don't believe their commanders will do anything. Number one impediment for reporting in the last survey that the DOD issued itself.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to politics. So are you going to run for president if Hillary doesn't run?
No.
Just cut right to the chase.
But I'm going to make sure Hillary does. And then I'll make sure everyone votes for her and help her raise money all across the country.
So we still don't know yet. I mean, have you thought about it if she doesn't run? Or
No.
Not your time? Or?
Without a doubt. I feel that this platform that I have to serve in the U.S. Senate is extraordinary. I feel blessed and lucky every single day that my job is to help people. I was complaining to my son this morning. Henry's 5 and Theo's 10. And I'm getting ready, and it's snowing, so the boys are ecstatic because it's a snow day, in addition to being spring break. So they're having today off no matter what. I was like, I wish I had today off. And Henry says, Mommy, then you should just change jobs. You need to change jobs. I said, Henry, Mommy has a really good job. I get to help people every single day. And he said, well, Mommy, that is a good job. So I feel like this job is something that I feel privileged to have, that I get to have a platform to talk about these issues, to make changes, to solve problems. And I feel blessed I get to represent the state of New York.
So it was no small secret that when Hillary ran in 2008, she faced some sexism. Is she going to face that again? What is she going to face in 2016?
Hard to say, but I think that Hillary is our best candidate. She is extraordinarily experienced. She has a gravitas, having been Secretary of State, having met with world leaders, knowing so many issues concerning national security. She is someone who understands Washington, understands Congress. I think will be able to navigate uniquely and get things done. So I think if she just runs on who she is and where she comes from and what she's about and let people get to know her, her true essence, she will win. And so I hope she runs a very forthright campaign about who she is. And I love it when I hear her stories about her mother and how her mother survived a very tough family life and left home at the age of 8 to wind up supporting herself and cleaning homes and being a nanny so that she could find her own path. That's the resilience that's in Hillary Clinton.
But as an electorate, have we moved beyond gender yet?
No.
No.
No. But you ask anybody in politics today, they will tell you, oh, I'd run a woman over a man every time.
Why?
Because women often are perceived, or even are, more authentic, more honest, more able to relate. So when you see a Heidi Heitkamp run in North Dakota, well, yes, that's a red, 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 red state. But when Heidi Heitkamp is like in her commercials hitting that softball and say, you know, they're going to throw at me all these negative ads, but I'm just getting started, as she bats each one of them away, you believe her and you like her and you say, you know what, she's just like me, and she's just like my mom, or she's just like my aunt, and she's going to represent me better than that other guy. That's real. And so
but yet men still haven't figured out how to run against women.
Which is a good thing. Because I want to elect more women.
All right, let's talk about that. So your goal is to get more women engaged in politics. How are you going to do that?
Well, asking them to run. You know, I liken my Off the Sidelines campaign to what Rosie the Riveter was during World War II. And if you remember, and you were almost all too young to even remember the advertising campaign, but it was a woman with her hair in a kerchief, her sleeves rolled up, and the slogan was, "We can do it." And it was an ad campaign the US government used because they wanted women to leave the home and enter the workplace because they had to help with the war industries. My grandmother, her sister, all worked at our local arsenal making these ammunition for big guns for World War II. And the reason why the campaign worked is it said two things. One, it said, "We can do it." That was the slogan. And the second thing, which is the most important thing to tell women, is that we need you. And so by the end of World War II, 6 million women entered the workplace. So my campaign, Off the Sidelines, is the same thing. You can do it, and we need you. Because what I see in America is that women's voices aren't being heard enough. If we, again, had 51% of women in Congress, our agenda would be different. We'd be fighting for paid leave. We'd be fighting for equal pay. We'd be fighting for raising the minimum wage or affordable daycare, universal pre-K, things that affect women's lives overwhelmingly that could affect the economy. We wouldn't spend 2 whole congressional sessions focused on how do we deny women access to contraception. And I want to say to my colleagues, could you please wake up? 98% of American women use contraception. This was debated and decided 50 years ago. Can we please move on to the economy or to national security or any of the other issues that we care deeply about? So I think if we have more women in Washington, more women voting around this country, more women being advocates for the things they care about, more women holding our elected leaders accountable, you will have a stronger government, you will have a different agenda, you will have more solutions being offered, and it will be a stronger country for it. And so until women's voices are heard, you will not see America reach its full potential.
What do you advise young women who are just getting into politics on how to navigate Washington once they get here? You yourself came, you hit the ground running, but then everybody said, oh, she's overly ambitious. I mean, how do you tell people to thread that needle, women?
First of all, ambition is not a bad word. All ambition is you have big goals. No one is against having goals. No one is against working hard to achieve them. So let's just leave that word that everybody hates aside and say we all embrace having goals and working hard to achieve them, because that's all ambition is. So first of all, change the vocabulary. Second of all, know that you will make the difference, that your life experience, that what you've accomplished in your life to date, the problems that you've lived through, the way you problem solve, the way you look at an issue, the way you can reach across the aisle and talk to that 85-year-old Republican senator really makes a difference, because he may want to listen to you to hear how you see a problem, how you see a solution. And so to tell women uniquely that not only are they qualified for these jobs, but they will make a difference, and their voice and their views and their experience is the difference, and that is good for America.
Is there still sexism in the Senate?
It is an old boys club without a doubt. We only have 20 women, but it is what it is, and that is...
So yes, that's a yes?
I wouldn't say it's sexist. I would say it is reality, because it is a very male-dominated industry. We still only have 20% women in the Senate, 18% women in the House. If you look at all the political consultants and all the lobbyists, I bet you would statistically find it's heavily weighted towards male gender. It's a very male-driven industry, and unfortunately that leaves us with an incomplete narrative of what this country needs. It leaves us in an incomplete place where women are going to see, I mean, the fact that we are the only industrialized country in the world that doesn't have paid family leave is outrageous. And it's because there's not enough women in politics or enough women holding these elected leaders accountable. Paid leave Afghanistan has paid leave. Pakistan has paid leave. But America doesn't have paid leave. 48% of workers in New York State are women. And those days of one parent going to work and the other parent staying home are long gone. Today, out of 10 families on a neighborhood block, only 2 have one parent going to work and one parent staying home. 5, both parents are working. That is the norm for America today. And in 3, you've got single moms. Single moms that are the only breadwinners putting food on the table for their kids. So if you don't have workplace policies that support women in the workplace, first of all, those women aren't going to reach their economic potential, because you know what happens if you have a baby or a sick child or a dying parent. Women have to ramp off their careers. And every time you ramp off their careers to take care of that family emergency, if you don't have paid leave, you can't stay in your job. You will likely have to change jobs or make some other modification. And when that happens, you're missing out on promotional opportunities. You're missing out on retirement benefits. You're missing out on pay. And I can't tell you how many stories I hear when that new baby comes, or that dying parent needs 24/7 care, or your child gets hit by a car and they're in a wheelchair for 5 months. What happens to that woman is she has to leave that job and rarely gets hired on the level when she left. She is almost always taking a pay cut, a cut in leadership, a cut in responsibility, and never really emerges. And the White House just did a great report on this, and one term they use that I love, the sticky floor. So 2/3 of all minimum wage earners are women. And so when you're a young mom and your kid gets sick and you're a minimum wage and you can't afford daycare, and so you leave your baby with your cousin or aunt or the lady next door, well, if your caregiver gets sick, you miss work that day, you may well be fired. And if you're not fired, you're certainly going to miss out on the next promotion. So you are constantly being put back into the lowest wage job with the least opportunity, and that's why 2/3 of minimum wage earners are still women. So we need to raise the minimum wage and get it out of poverty wages. $15,000 a year is $3,000 below the poverty line if you have 2 kids. So we are literally telling these women, we want you to work 40 hours a week, full-time, and we want you living in poverty. That is not the American dream. That is not our core value. We have always rewarded work in this country, and we are not doing that by the policies we're setting in Washington.
All right, we're almost done. I have 2 more questions. Just getting back to the sexism in the Senate for a second. So were you flattered or offended when Senator Reid said you were the hottest member of the Senate?
I was flattered, but I was disappointed that the press didn't cover the second thing he said. He said, Kirsten Gillibrand, well, some people, are well known for how well they dress. Some people are well known for how well they speak. But Senator Gillibrand, she's known because she's the hottest woman in the Senate, but she's also the smartest on financial regulatory reform. Well, I'm one of the smartest on financial regulatory reform. That could help me, but no, that doesn't get reported. So I was just disappointed that I didn't get the second half of the remark.
I don't think anybody will miss the second part.
Yeah, but I was really smart in financial regulatory reform.
All right, now you also, we're going to end with this, you also have a book coming out in September called Off the Sidelines. Okay, and it's going to go over some of these themes?
All of it. So everything we've talked about today is in a book form. And so all those funny stories about how do you manage being a senator and being a mom, all those funny stories about how you learn how to do things well over time, that you don't really have it all in your first day. All those missteps are all in there. I've put in every funny story I could possibly remember. It will be a great book. You will love it. So please buy it. It'll come out in September.
Thank you very much. It was
Thank
great.
You.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you. Yeah.